I say this with full love for men, but the reality is that men are draining by default. That the default assumption that you need to make for a man in your life is that he is not the source. In fact, he is draining. He is draining by default. He is going to drain your time, your energy, your compassion, and your love. He is going to drain your beauty and your youth and all the resources that you have. Men.
Are we in the Twilight Zone? Men are draining your resources. Oh man, every day, man, every day it never stops. Men are draining your resources. Men are draining your resources.
Men are draining by default. Even the best men I know are tremendous amounts of labor and tremendous amounts of risk.
Wow.
That just having a man in your life is going to bring you more labor. It's going to be your domestic labor, your emotional labor, your spiritual labor, because as women, we are the source, which means that we are giving by default. Women bring value to men by default, by all that we pour into them naturally, that we give to their well-being, to the beauty, to the joy, to their every single aspect of their experience in life. A woman by default, just your average run-of-the-mill woman, not even trying that hard, maybe not even that invested. By default, the default setting of woman is to bring value. Just you hugging a man, just you paying attention and listening to a man, just you caring for a man, let alone all the things that I'm sure you probably are so thoughtful and so considerate and so generous and so giving and spend so much time coaching him and counseling him and loving him and lifting him up. All these things by default without even trying, we do.
You know what's so funny about listening to this is everything that she's saying and complaining about are all things that men do not ask for. And I'm going to explain this more in detail with another video to follow this one up, because she's like, we coach them, we teach them. Like, men just want to be, in most cases, men want to be left alone. Never mind how delusional this statement is of men are depleting and women bring value to men. Do I think that women do bring value to the men who value them? Yes. But the way this is framed and structured is just insane.
Not to mention, you're going to be making his health better, his house better. You're going to be introducing him to your friends. You're going to be giving him fun, amazing things to be doing on the holidays. You might be giving him children so he's not alone in his old age.
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad she brought all this stuff up. Wait, it's going to make sense in a little bit.
You're going to be amplifying his status in the eyes of his coworkers, his colleagues, other women. He is touch-starved. He is lonely. No one is paying attention to him except you. Because you are doing these things, he has that in his life, and that is so valuable, and men are draining by default. They are going to take your time, your energy, your love. And the way that they counterbalance this is if a man starts pouring back into you by appreciating you as the source.
What?
That is how this is balanced, is a man who recognizes that you are the source and pours into you, sees you, loves you, uplifts you, appreciates you. And that is the only way that this value exchange is made right and true and honest, is by him recognizing you as the source, appreciating you for everything that you're doing, and honoring that sacred exchange. And
this chick's insane. Bottom line, insanity has entered the chat. Wow. Women are the source. Guys, you allow women to describe themselves, and they'll literally describe God in their eyes, right? How they view themselves. We are the source of all things. We're the creators of all life. We're the beginning. We're the end. She's mentioning all these things of all they help you take care of your health. They take you to all these different activities. They pretty much plan your life, when the truth is, you go to any man, even a man who has a woman he really cares about, in most cases, he doesn't beg and want all those things. These are all things that you have forced on him, right? Check out this video. I thought was hilarious.
Fun fact about guys, we don't want to do anything. And women want to do things. We're going to go apple picking. We're going to go to brunch. We don't want to do any of that. We'll do it to be nice, but just know that none of us want to do it. I used to go out with this girl, and I would fly in from a gig. Let's say my flight landed at 4. She'd be like, when do you fly in? And I go, I fly in at 7. She'd be like, oh, all right, I'll come over at 7 and we'll hang out. But I needed those 3 hours to just fart, shit, decompress, unpack, watch a fucking TV show. So I would lie to her just
Hear the dude in the background there just like backing him up, like, whoo, I get it.
to get myself a little charge up time. I would open the door and be like, what are we doing today? It's Sunday. Kill myself. So no guy wants to do anything. We'll do it, but we don't want to.
It's so true. It's
But we don't
so
want
true.
Fun fact.
Let's check out some of these comments. This top comment says, every time I leave the house, it costs $150. Man, that's a fact. Not once did she mention the chick before this. Did she mention anything of monetary value that you hear women talk about every single day? Here's somebody else who says it's because doing stuff costs money and we usually paying. Here's somebody else who says they want to do stuff because it's free to them. Right. Let's go apple picking. Let's go do this. God forbid you say, let's go walk at the park. Another person who says they don't know how to be bored. The accuracy of this is astounding. So this is facts. You go to most events, even couples events, man. You look around, you know, most guys were kind of forced to be there. You know, if they had it their way, they would skip a lot of those events. And a lot of chicks interpret that as you don't want to spend time with your woman. It's not that. Men just don't need that much socializing. They don't need that many things on their plate. They already have a lot on their plate, right? If you had the burden of responsibility of taking care of your family or of providing, so on and so forth, then you would also understand what it's like to be in that type of a situation. What do you guys think? Of course, always curious. I thought this one was really interesting too, on the topic of men. Let's check it out.
Men can hang around like this for hours and not even ask each other's names. I constantly see posts where women are asking about this on social media, saying, how can men hang out for so long and walk away not knowing what these guys do for a living or whether or not they have kids or if they're married? The answer to me is so obvious that I actually wonder what it's like for a big group of women. Because among men, a conversation about something inconsequential like sports is fun. A conversation about your life and where you are in life is work. It is stressful in the exact same way that a job interview is stressful. You are being put on the spot. You have to justify how you're living your life.
Right.
There was a viral post a while ago talking about how when women get together to talk, they tend to face each other, whereas men prefer some kind of a parallel activity where they are both focusing on some third thing.
Right.
And while I cannot vouch for the science behind that post at all, the idea made perfect sense to me because this position between two men is often felt as confrontation, a challenge.
Right.
And please understand that the way men do this can be extremely subtle. Like you can see a bunch of guys standing around joking, but you can see them competing for who gets the best line. When they're telling anecdotes about some time when they badly injured themselves in the past, you'll see them competing with each other for the best injury. It won't sound like confrontation. It will just sound like comparison, but it is a competition. So the nicest thing a guy can do when meeting another guy is to keep the conversation trivial, to reassure him you're not going to have to justify your life and your career and your family situation to me. Like, you understand, this is literally why sports exists as a form of entertainment versus just something that people get together and do in the park. It gives guys something to talk about that is objectively of no consequence. It is of no threat. And before you come in and say, you are generalizing, I know lots of guys who are not like this and lots of women who are. Everybody already understands that. That's how generalization works.
Right. I really like that sports example that he gave right there, where he talks about how sports, because if you really think about that, it makes a lot of sense. Men are naturally competitive, and sports allows them to talk about something they could be competitive in without too much emotional investment. Granted, there are people who get very emotional with sports like soccer, people like off themselves and shit like that. But in most cases, it's a fun, lighthearted activity where you can compete, but not be directly affected unless if you have a serious gambling problem. Sports betting. But in most cases, you're just enjoying the sport. I like the way he really presented this, and I agree. I agree. Let's check out some comments here. Top comment here says, if someone tells me their name, I instantly forget it anyway. This is true. This is true. There are a couple of dudes, man, who I know, and I run into them. You know, you go around, you get like food from a certain place, and you may exchange words, and sometimes you have actual deep conversations. I've actually had this happen with my wife, who've been like, "Oh yeah, what's his name?" And I'm like, you know what? I didn't ask him his name. I've had this happen. I'm sure you could probably relate too if you're a man. Somebody else who says, for women, it's about comparing status, and with men, it's about forgetting about status. Oh, that's deep. Yeah, the last thing you want to bring up when you're talking to a guy is like, so how's your job going, or how are finances, and so on and so forth. But chicks bring that up really very, very easily. Somebody else responded back and says, no, it's about bonding with the person. And that means you need to know a lot about each other so you have common things to share and talk about and get close. Men do surface level friendship. 43 likes of triggered women responded back to that. He responded back and says, knowing a lot about someone takes many interactions. This specific context is about not knowing them and still having a good time. Women compare lifestyles, men compare cars and athletes. I was just texting my boy who I haven't talked to in a while. And when I went to go text him, I noticed when I looked at the phone, I saw that he asked me a question 3 months ago, and I missed it and forgot to respond. And so I texted him anyway. I just said, first I answered the question, and then I just sent him the text. And he just went on the conversation like nothing happened. There was no this like, what's your name? Text me, and I don't know if I'm going to respond because I need people who are going to be, no, none of that. None of that shit that these chicks deal with, bro. And it's good to be a man. Here's somebody else who says, because we are not detectives. Another person who says, I had 3-hour conversation with a friend I hadn't seen in 10 years. It was great. My wife asked me how he was since his divorce. I said, Jeff got divorced? She responds back, somebody else responded back and says, OMG, what a perfect example. That's facts. Here's another comment that says, I got to hang with a dude a few times before names are important. Somebody else who says, I talk about work enough when I'm at work. Don't ask me about it. Yep. Here's another person who says, men, we know how to be friends. Family Guy skit. Here's another person who says, we are not trying to impress. We are just being. Another comment here says, we're not going to bring up stress to our bros unless it's really bothering us. Yeah. Because men know that when somebody brings up a problem, our natural reaction is to try and find a solution. Women will bring up problems just to bring up problems. Like it's actually proven that that's how they actually de-stress, is that they start rattling off things that are wrong in their lives, and they don't want solutions, which might explain the rise of TikTok and the videos we see on a consistent basis. Oh man, crazy. All right, what else do we have here? This one was a crazy story. Let's check it out.